Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Tracy Berger, and today I want to take us back to a classic creative text and look at how this author talks about affirmations. So, this is one of my in-between videos related to my weekly affirmation project for creatives. I'm Michelle Tracy Berger. Welcome, and let's get started. So, some of you hopefully will know this book, but if you don't, this book is a life-changing book, The Artist's Way, A Spiritual Path to Higher Creativity by Julia Cameron and Mark Bryan. It's been around for probably over 30 years, translated worldwide, and it's sort of a self-recovery, self-discovery process over 12 weeks. It's kind of modeled in some ways on the 12-step program, but it tries to get people to acknowledge their creative self and support their path to being a more creative person. And you can it I think it tends to have a very spiritual tone. It uses the word God, often universe, divine. So that may not resonate for you, but there's so much wisdom in it that you can maneuver around that if that's not your thing. Julia Cameron has written many, many books around creativity. So if you don't know her work, it would behoove you, if you're a creative person, um, to look at it because she comes with a lot of deep wisdom. And for our purposes, I wanted to go back. I've been looking at different texts that have made a difference in my life related to just creativity, but also what they might say about affirmations. And indeed, I did this probably, I did the Artist Way probably 30 years ago, somewhere along that. And it was definitely a transformative experience. I was in graduate school at the time, pursuing a PhD in political science and feeling, knowing that I always wanted to write and thought that I was going to be a writer and didn't feel like I was quite on that path, even though I loved academia aspects of it and I loved the life of the mind. It was really, I experienced graduate school in is a very rigid kind of place. And I found this book and did this book along with some dear friends of mine. Anyway, so she has, the other thing I'll say about this, if you don't know, if you took nothing away from this book, one of the things that has influenced people is to do a once a week artist date. It doesn't necessarily cost money. It's about having fun, being curious. People have used that exercise along with the exercise called morning pages, where you get up and you write freehand 3 pages of just whatever is on your mind, and you just kind of get that out for the day. And you don't, it's not, it's sort of like soil, but you're not trying to, it's not your creative, you're not, you might find creative things in there to write more about or to get, you might have ideas, but it's really to kind of get, kind of your, um, just kind of top level thoughts out of your way, like, so and so did me wrong, or, I'm worried about this upcoming meeting, and just kind of getting that out of the way so that you can kind of proceed in the day. So, morning pages and artist dates, great tools. I wanted to remind myself what she said about affirmations. And indeed, she says quite a lot about affirmations in the middle of the book that I think is so powerful. Um, so she talks about affirmations as affirmative weapons, and cultivating them is about cultivating your ally within. She says, as blocked creatives, we often sit on the sidelines critiquing those in the game. This is often true, I think, for people, stalled creatives. He's not so talented, we may say, of a currently hot artist, and we may be right about that. All too often, it is audacity and not talent that moves an artist to center stage. As blocked creatives, we tend to regard these bogus spotlight grabbers with animosity. We may be able to defer to their true genius, but if it's merely a genius for self promotion, we're witnessing our resentment runs high. This is not just jealousy, it's a stalling technique that reinforces our staying stuck. We make speeches to ourselves and other willing victims. I could do that better if only. You could do it better if only you would let yourself do it. Affirmations will help you allow yourself to do it. Now, this is her definition of affirmations. An affirmation is a positive statement of positive belief. And if we can become 1/10 as good at positive self talk as we are at negative self talk, we will notice an enormous change. And that's one of the reasons why I am such a big believer and promoter of affirmations, because if we can't get to positive, at least we can try to get to neutral on our way to positive. And no creative person I know is just so filled up with positive self talk all the time that they can't use a little bit more. So she also says affirmations help achieve a sense of safety and hope. This is so powerful. This is not something that I've talked or emphasized, but I love that that framing about hope. She says when we first start working with affirmations, they may feel dumb, hokey, embarrassing. Isn't this interesting? We can easily and without embarrassment bludgeon ourselves with negative affirmations. I'm not gifted enough, not clever enough, not original enough, so on. But saying nice things about ourselves is notoriously hard to do. It feels pretty awful at first. Try these and see if they don't sound hopelessly syrupy. I deserve love. I deserve fair pay. I deserve a rewarding creative life. I am a brilliant and successful artist. And she goes on. So then she has a way of talking about, so I talk about the inner critic, and, people could talk about them as inner judges and inner evaluators. That part of ourselves that tends to come out and come forward and misalign in misaligned ways with what we're doing, and malign our creative work at early stages. And inner critics are typically a psychic protective mechanism, but they can be overly developed. So she calls them censors, uh, censor, censors. And she talks about how they immediately pop up with, who do you think you are? Um, and then she has you write out an affirmation and then also look at the censor, or what I would call the inner critic, how that also comes out and starts to rail against you. So she says, listen to the objections, look at the ugly, stumpy little blurts. Brilliant and prolific you are. Sure you are. Since when? You can't spell. You call writer's block prolific? You're just kidding yourself. An idiot. So really, when you think about how we talk to ourselves, we would never use that language with anyone that we care about in our life. We would never criticize in that way. We would never belittle in that way, but we do that to ourselves. So she says, you will be amazed at the rotten things your subconscious will blurt out. Write them down. These blurts flag your personal negative core beliefs. They hold the key to your freedom in their ugly little claws. And then she has some examples, and then you get a chance to look at the core beliefs. And she has also some great other examples of what other people talk about as affirmations. And then she gives, she has 20 affirmations that are creative affirmations that she encourages people to use, which I highly recommend you look at if you're interested. I think it's a wonderful list. And then one of her tasks is um, every morning, set your clock 1/2 hour early, get up and write 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness writing. Do not reread these. And then this week, please be sure to work with your affirmations. So that's your morning pages. So the three longhand handwritten pages. She says, this week, please be sure to work with your affirmations of choice and your blurts at the end of each day's morning pages. Convert all blurts into positive affirmations. So there's so much richness in this chapter. And this is just week one, recovering a sense of safety. I had forgotten where it lived, but there's so much goodness here around affirmations and richness, and really the whole book is an incredible resource, an incredible gift to all people on the path, all creative people, aspiring creative people, professional artists. And so if you haven't had a chance to look at it, you may want to, and it may support your affirmations. So one thing you can do is, you can go back through my videos and you can take one of those affirmations, try it out and see what comes up. See what the inner critic says or what your blurt says, what your inner censor says, and see if look at that and see what you can discern. Is there an origin story there about like where that came from, so you can kind of go a layer deeper, but just know that that's not obviously who you are, and that's not the tone we want to cultivate for our powerful, creative, magical selves, right? So that's where affirmations can really lead us into the places we want to go, that we can talk to ourselves a little bit more with more compassion, a little bit nicer, and lead us toward where we want to go. Hope you found this video interesting, useful. Have you read The Artist's Way? Do you remember what she says about affirmations? How is this landing for you? Please let me know in the comments. Would love to hear how this is landing. And if you're new here, I do a lot of work on creativity, making it fun and accessible, breaking it down for us. And affirmations is one area of that. It's one of the transformational tools, I like to say. And if you know someone, a creative person who would really benefit from working on their self-talk, going from negative to neutral to positive, ideally, let them know about the work I'm up to here. And thank you so much for tuning in. And I look forward to seeing you next week with another affirmation.